If you become a patron, you can hear more audiobooks that aren't available on YouTube, such as Socialism with Chinese Characteristics, A Guide for Foreigners by Roland Bohr, Khrushchev Lied and Blood Lies by Grover Furr, a rare biography of Mao Zedong written by his most trusted bodyguard, and much more. Become a subscriber by following the first link in the description below. Thank you for your support. The Governance of China, Volume 4 by Xi Jinping. Audiobook Part 11, Socialist Rule of Law. Implement the Civil Code in earnest. Part of this speech at the 20th Group Study Session of the Political Bureau of the 19th CPC Central Committee. May 29, 2020. The Civil Code has an important place in China's socialist system of laws. It is a basic law that consolidates governance foundations, meets public expectations, and brings long-term benefits. It is of great significance in advancing law-based governance and building a socialist country under the rule of law, in growing the socialist market economy, and reinforcing the basic socialist economic system, in pursuing people-centered development, in protecting the people's rights and interests in accordance with the law, in promoting human rights, in modernizing the state system and capacity for governance. The Civil Code is an integration of the civil laws that have been enacted over the past 70 years, since the founding of the PRC. It has drawn on the essence of the 5,000-year-old Chinese legal tradition, as well as the achievements of other civilizations in the rule of law. It is in accord with the socialist nature of our country, the wishes and interests of our people, and the requirements of contemporary development. It highlights equal protection of people's rights and interests concerning life, health, property, transactions, happiness, and dignity. It carries distinctive Chinese features, guides practice, and has strong contemporary relevance. To implement the Civil Code in earnest, we must focus on the following. First, we must raise public awareness of the significance of the Civil Code. It must be made clear that the implementation of the Civil Code is essential to protecting the people's rights and interests and achieving people-centered development. The Civil Code regulates personal relationships and property relationships among natural persons, legal persons, and other parties. These are the most common social and economic relations which manifest themselves in all aspects of social and economic activity, and are integral to people's life and work and the development of all sectors. Only when the Civil Code is well implemented can the people's rights and interests be effectively protected, and social order and harmony be maintained. It must be made clear that the implementation of the Civil Code is essential to growing the socialist market economy and strengthening the basic socialist economic system. The Civil Code has codified China's major institutional achievements in the socialist market economy and the socialist rule of law in the past decades, as it regulates the economy as well as the property relationships and transactional relationships essential to economic activities. The Civil Code is of great significance in upholding and improving the basic socialist economic system and boosting the socialist market economy. It must be made clear that the implementation of the Civil Code is essential to improving our party's capacity for governance. The Civil Code is an important institutional vehicle for law-based governance. Many of its stipulations are directly related to state agencies and to the rights, interests, and obligations of citizens and legal persons. In performing duties and exercising power, state agencies must be very clear about the scope and boundaries of their activities. Party and state agencies at all levels must respect the stipulations of the Civil Code and must not infringe upon the lawful civil rights of any individual, including personal rights and property rights. Furthermore, relevant government agencies supervisory offices, and judicial departments must function in accordance with the law to protect civil rights from being violated and to promote order and harmony in civil relations. The effective implementation of the Civil Code is an important index for evaluating the performance of all levels of party and state agencies in serving the people. Second, we must improve civil legislation. The promulgation and implementation of the Civil Code does not mean that all problems in civil laws have been resolved once and for all. On the contrary, many issues need to be tested and studied in practice, and the laws need to be further refined, supplemented, and supported by relevant statutes. Relevant state agencies must meet the changing needs of reform and opening up, and socialist modernization, and thereby improve laws and regulations related to the Civil Code. By summarizing experience, we need to constantly amend the laws and regulations related to the Civil Code and judicial interpretations. As to administrative regulations that are inconsistent with the stipulations and principles of the Civil Code, we must amend or revoke them without delay. We will issue judicial interpretations to clarify the provisions of the Civil Code and the legal grounds of its application, so that it can remain both consistent and adaptive. The law must be adaptive to the changing times so that social order and stability are maintained. Footnote 1. Han Fei Zi. End of footnote 1. As social and economic relationships keep changing, along with social and economic progress, new problems will always emerge during the implementation of the Civil Code. In the fight against COVID-19, we have seen new technologies, new industries, and new forms of businesses emerge. And our ways of life, work, and socializing have changed accordingly, which prompt new subjects for civil legislation. We must focus on solving problems and adapt ourselves to technological progress, striving to constantly improve the Civil Code based on our experience. Third, we must strengthen the enforcement of the Civil Code. We must see that law is enforced in a strict, procedure-based, impartial, and non-abusive way, and we must raise public confidence in the judiciary. This is an effective means to assert the authority of the Civil Code. Governments at all levels must ensure the effective implementation of the Civil Code as a major channel for building law-based government. The Civil Code must serve as a key yardstick for administrative decision-making, administration, and scrutiny. The government must never violate the law in making decisions that curtail or damage the lawful rights and interests of citizens, legal persons, and other organizations, or expand their obligations. Government activities must abide by the law, whether in administrative licensing, penalty, coercion, expropriation, charges, inspection, or adjudication. The government must improve its capacity and performance in law-based administration and punish any acts or individuals that harm the lawful rights and interests of the public. Civil cases are most directly and closely connected with public rights and interests. Upholding impartial administration of justice, judicial departments at all levels must increase their capacity and efficiency for adjudicating civil cases. The delivery of civil justice must be improved, particularly in terms of the quality of case handling and public confidence in the judiciary. We must improve the judicial interpretation of other civil laws to ensure their consistency with the stipulations and principles in the Civil Code, and to adopt unified application standards of all civil laws. We must improve adjudication of civil cases and provide better oversight and guidance, particularly concerning the protection of property rights, right to dignity, intellectual property rights, and the eco-environment, and respond to public concerns in a timely manner. We must improve prosecuting work regarding civil cases, strengthen supervision of judicial activities, provide unimpeded channels for judicial remedy, and prevent intervention in civil and economic disputes on the pretext of handling criminal cases, so as to protect the lawful rights and interests of citizens, legal persons, and other organizations. The Civil Code is a very specialized law. In applying the code, we should bring into full play the role of lawyers and law firms. These professionals and professional organizations should help people to realize and protect their lawful rights and interests. At the same time, we must leverage diverse mechanisms for resolving disputes, such as people's mediation and commercial arbitration, and improve legal aid and judicial remedies, the engagement of non-governmental entities and grassroots organizations in solving civil disputes will also facilitate the implementation of the Civil Code. Fourth, we must popularize the Civil Code nationwide. The Civil Code is composed of 1,260 articles in 7 books, with a total of over 100,000 Chinese characters. In China's whole legal system, it is the biggest in size and the most complex in structure, with the largest number of articles. To implement the Civil Code properly, we must ensure it is widely understood and well received by the public. We will popularize the Civil Code nationwide as part of our legal education campaign during the 14th five-year plan period, 2021 to 2025. We will raise public awareness that the Civil Code is a law to protect their rights and interests, as well as a set of norms that all members of society must observe. We will help them develop an awareness of abiding by the law, looking to the law when running into problems, and relying on the law to resolve problems. We will include the Civil Code into the national education system and strengthen education among young people. The Civil Code contains a large number of terms that require accurate interpretation. We need to fully comprehend the essence and key points of the general part of and the 6 books on specific topics. In so doing, we can convey its underlying principles of equality, free will, fairness, and good faith. We need to explain clearly its basic stipulations of ensuring the equal legal status of all parties in civil activities, protecting property rights, facilitating transactions, protecting human dignity, promoting family harmony, and identifying tort liability, and in the process, give an accurate interpretation of the new stipulations, new concepts, and new principles in the Civil Code. Fifth, we must improve theoretical research on our civil law system. Since reform and opening up was launched in 1978, China has achieved notable progress in theoretical research on civil law and the relevant discourse system. However, this theoretical progress is not working in parallel with our legal acts that keep changing with the passing of time. We must persist in making the theory of Chinese socialist rule of law our guidance and proceed from realities to improve theoretical research on the civil law system. We must move faster to build a theoretical system and a discourse on civil laws that display the socialist nature of our country, carry distinctive Chinese features, guide practice, and remain responsive to the times. These systems will provide theoretical support for implementing the Civil Code and developing our civil legal instruments. Party and state agencies at all levels must take the lead in publicizing the Civil Code, facilitating and guaranteeing its full effective implementation, and strengthening inspection and supervision. Leading officials at all levels must set a good example in studying, observing, and upholding the Civil Code. We must improve our capacity and performance in using the Civil Code to protect the people's rights and interests, in resolving problems and disputes, and in promoting social harmony and stability. Provide sound legal guarantees for socialist modernization. Part of the speech at the Central Conference on Law-Based Governance. November 16th, 2020. After the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, the Central Committee set the goal of comprehensively advancing the rule of law and included it in the four-pronged comprehensive strategy. In 2014, the fourth plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee took up the issue and adopted the resolution on major issues concerning comprehensively advancing the rule of law in China. After the 19th CPC National Congress in 2017, the Central Committee established the Commission for Law-Based Governance and made a series of decisions and plans on advancing law-based governance from an overall and strategic perspective, leading to historic changes and achievements in developing socialist rule of law in China. We have laid down in China's constitution that leadership by the Communist Party of China is the defining feature of socialism with Chinese characteristics. We have strengthened the systems for ensuring that the CPC provides guidance for legislation, guarantees law enforcement, supports judicial justice, and plays an exemplary role in abiding by the law, making the party's leadership over law-based governance more effective. We have improved the top-level design and built legislative, enforcement, supervisory, and supporting systems for the rule of law, as well as a sound system of party regulations forming an overall framework of law-based governance. We have improved legislation in key areas, expanded reform in the domain of law-based governance, and taken further steps in building a law-based government. We have also established state supervision institutions, reformed the judicial system, raised public legal awareness, run the military in accordance with the law, and striven to build a strong contingent of professionals devoted to the rule of law. We have resolutely upheld social fairness and justice, and rectified a number of unjust cases. All this has contributed to progress in practicing law-based governance now, and for the foreseeable future. To advance law-based governance, we must implement the decisions made at the 19th CPC National Congress and the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th plenary sessions of the 19th CPC Central Committee. We need to focus on the general goal of establishing a system of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics and building a socialist country under the rule of law. We must ensure the party's leadership, the people's position as masters of the country, and law-based governance. By addressing prominent problems related to the rule of law, we will keep to the path of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics and modernize China's governance system and capacity in accordance with the law. In doing so, we aim to provide sound legal guarantees for building China into a modern socialist country and realizing the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. To this end, solid efforts should be made in the following areas. First, uphold overall party leadership in law-based governance. Party leadership is the fundamental guarantee for comprehensive law-based governance in our country. The CPC is the world's largest ruling party and governs the world's most populous country. How can it exercise state power and govern the country well? How can it mobilize 1.4 billion Chinese people to build a modern socialist country? These are critical questions that always deserve our full attention. History is the best textbook. It can teach us knowledge and prudence. While leading the drive towards socialist rule of law, the party has accumulated successful experiences and drawn painful lessons, especially during the 10-year turmoil of the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976. China's legal system was devastated, at heavy cost to the party and the people. After the Cultural Revolution, Deng Xiaoping regarded strengthening the legal system as an issue of great importance to the future of our party and our country. He emphasized that we must strengthen our legal system. Democracy has to be institutionalized and written into law. Footnote 1. Deng Xiaoping. Emancipate the mind, seek truth from facts, and unite as one in looking to the future. Selected works of Deng Xiaoping. Volume 2, English edition, Foreign Languages Press, Beijing, 1995, page 156. End of footnote 1. A review of previous successes and failures indicates that the more complex the international and domestic environment and the more difficulties we face in reform, opening up, and socialist modernization, the more we need to use law-based thinking and approaches to consolidate our party's governing status and improve its exercise of power and capacity for governance, so as to ensure enduring stability in our party and our country. All party members must be clearly aware that promoting law-based governance will strengthen and improve the party's leadership rather than weakening it. We should institutionalize party leadership over law-based governance, codify rules for the exercise of leadership by the party, and ensure effective implementation of the party's guidelines, principles, and policies through strengthening the rule of law. We should combine law-based governance of the country and rule-based governance of the party, ensuring that the party governs the country in accordance with the Constitution and the law. and practices self-governance pursuant to party rules and regulations. I addressed the question of whether the party is above the law on several occasions in 2015, including the time when I heard the reports of the party leadership groups of the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate at a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, and when I attended the opening ceremony of a study session for principal officials at the provincial and ministerial level on implementing the decisions of the 4th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee on advancing law-based governance. I have made it clear that this question itself is problematic and is a political trap. We must leave no room for confusion, but answer the question clearly. Party, leadership, and law-based governance are not in conflict but inherently coherent. Our country's laws embody the will of the party and the people, and our party acts in accordance with the law, which manifests an inseparable relationship between the two. All party members should keep in mind that party leadership is the soul of our country's socialist rule of law, and the biggest difference between Chinese and Western rule of law. Without party leadership, we would be unable to promote law-based governance and build a socialist country under the rule of law. We do not consider the question to be relevant because the party is seen as one integral whole, exercising leadership in national governance as the country's ruling party. Every party and government organization and every official must abide by the Constitution and the law. Certain matters should be submitted to party committees for decision, but that does not mean they can override the law or interfere with enforcement to cover up illegal deeds. Instead, they must honor their responsibility and ensure political and procedural integrity. We should keep in mind that there is a clear boundary here. Second, uphold a people-centered approach. The people are the broadest and most solid foundation for comprehensive law-based governance, which must rely on and benefit the people. We must represent the people's interests, reflect their wishes, protect their rights and interests, and improve their well-being throughout the process of law-based governance in all sectors. Moreover, we must ensure that the people under the leadership of the party are able to administer state affairs and manage economic, cultural, and social affairs through various channels and in various ways, and ensure that they enjoy extensive rights and freedoms and fulfill due obligations in accordance with the law. The ultimate goal of law-based governance is to protect the people's lawful rights and interests, alongside China's sustained economic and social development and steady improvement of living standards. The people's demands continue to grow with respect to democracy, rule of law, justice, fairness, security, and environmental protection, among others. In this context, we should actively respond to their new demands and expectations and adopt a solution-oriented approach to achieving our goal. We should employ dialectical thinking, see the broader picture, and systematically study and address major concerns of the people in the domain of law-based governance. In this way, we strive to increase their sense of gain, fulfillment, and security, and safeguard their well-being through the rule of law. Third, uphold the rule of law under socialism with Chinese characteristics. I once said that, in essence, our path of Chinese socialist law-based governance is an embodiment of Chinese socialism in the domain of rule of law. Our theory of Chinese socialist rule of law is a fruit of the theory of Chinese socialism in the rule of law, and our system of Chinese socialist rule of law is a legal manifestation of the Chinese socialist system. On the one hand, based on the present situation, we need to use law-based thinking and approaches to solve deep-seated problems hindering economic and social development. On the other hand, looking into the future, we need to lay the foundations for the rule of law, give full play to the power of the rule of law, and gather momentum for advancing the rule of law, so as to build more mature and well-defined systems and provide long-term institutional guarantee for developing the cause of the party and the state. Since ancient times, China has formed a legal system that occupies a unique place in the history of world legal systems and has fostered a profound legal culture. Traditional Chinese law took shape in the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, and gradually matured in the Sui, 581 to 618, and Tang, 618 to 907 dynasties. best represented by the book Tong Code with Commentaries, compiled in the 7th century. The influence of traditional Chinese law declined after the late Qing dynasty, 1616 to 1911. Unlike legal systems such as continental law, Anglo-American law, and Islamic law, traditional Chinese law was formed against a historical background unique to China. It testifies to the great creativity of the Chinese nation and the cultural profundity of China's legal tradition. It epitomizes the ethos and wisdom of the Chinese nation and contains many excellent ideas and concepts worth passing on. These include the governance strategy of enforcing public discipline through the application of both morality and law, the people-centered concept that the people are the foundation of a state, and only when the foundation is solid will the state be stable, the wish for social harmony without lawsuits, the idea of prudence that prioritizes moral enlightenment over legal punishment, the concept of equality that advocates passing judgments in accordance with the law and ensures that the punishment fits the crime, and the principle of leniency towards widowers, widows, orphans, childless couples, the elderly, children, women, and people with disabilities. All of these shed light on the wisdom of China's traditional legal culture. In modern times, some attempted to clone Western rule of law in China, but all such efforts ended in failure. History and reality have told us that while we can learn and benefit from foreign experience in the rule of law, we can only consolidate the legal foundation for building China into a modern socialist country and realizing the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation by carrying forward the Chinese legal tradition and by exploring a path of rule of law best suited to our country in the process of revolution, construction, and reform. It must be noted that in the drive to advanced law-based governance, under no circumstances should we try to duplicate the models and practices of other countries or adopt such Western models as constitutionalism, separation of powers, and judicial independence. Practice has proved that our country's current political system and legal framework suit our own national context and realities, and have remarkable strengths. We must maintain confidence, faith, and resolve on this point. The facts have helped the Chinese people to grow in confidence. Since the coronavirus hit China, we have upheld the general principles of strengthening confidence and solidarity and taking science-based and targeted measures. On February 5th, at a crucial moment in the fight against the virus, I presided over the third meeting of the Commission for Law-Based Governance to make arrangements for advancing epidemic prevention and control in accordance with the law. I laid particular emphasis on the fact that the greater the challenges we face in the battle against the epidemic, the greater the need to uphold law-based approaches and coordinate the implementation of all prevention and control measures in line with the law. All provincial authorities and central departments have done their best in legislation, judicature, public legal education, and law enforcement and observance. They have rigorously implemented measures such as partial lockdown, isolation of the infected, traffic restrictions, and disposal of infected corpses in accordance with statutory mandates and procedures. They have taken resolute action against offenses hindering epidemic prevention and control, and diffused epidemic-related disputes in accordance with the law. These measures have provided legal guarantees for realizing strategic success in epidemic prevention and control. Fourth, uphold constitution-based governance and exercise of state power. The Constitution is the fundamental law of China and has the supreme legal authority. Our party leads the people in enacting and enforcing the Constitution and the law, and it must act within the confines of the Constitution and the law. All the people, as well as all state agencies, armed forces, political parties, social organizations, enterprises, and public institutions must regard the Constitution as their basic code of conduct and perform their duty of upholding the authority of the Constitution and ensuring that its provisions are observed. No organization or individual will be permitted to enjoy any special privilege that places them above the Constitution and the law, and all acts in violation of the Constitution or the law must be punished. The fourth plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee stated that in pursuing law-based governance, we must first uphold constitution-based governance, and that in pursuing law-based exercise of state power, we must first uphold constitution-based exercise of state power. Our constitution-based governance and exercise of state power are essentially different from the constitutionalism of the West, and we should treat them as such. To uphold constitution-based governance and exercise of state power, we must resolutely uphold the CPC's status as the governing party, the people's democratic dictatorship as the governing system, and the system of people's congresses as the governing structure, which are stipulated in the Constitution. Maintaining the unity of law across the country is a serious political issue. China is a unitary country, so it is essential to maintain consistency in laws and regulations across the country. In 2015, the legislation law was amended, granting local legislative powers to all cities with districts. Since then, progress has been made in local legislation. Despite a positive overall situation, problems such as violation of laws and substandard legislation still exist in some regions with far-reaching consequences. We will strengthen implementation and oversight of the Constitution and address questions of constitutionality. All regulations and normative documents that violate the Constitution and the law must be rectified or revoked. Moreover, local legislation should be formulated in the light of actual needs. There is no need for anything more than is necessary to address a relevant issue. If 5 articles will suffice for a particular issue, construct a 5-article regulation. Do not try to make things grandiose and intimidating. The key lies in fully understanding the Central Committee's guiding principles and solving pressing problems based on local realities. Fifth, uphold the rule of law in modernizing the state system and capacity for governance. The rule of law is a key pillar for the state governance system and capacity. Only through comprehensively advancing law-based governance can we ensure that our state governance system is systematic, coordinated, and procedure-based, and can forge the widest possible consensus in society. Over the 7 decades since the founding of the PRC, our country has maintained rapid economic growth and lasting social stability, an achievement remarkable by any standards. This is closely related to our ongoing efforts to advance socialist rule of law. In the battle against COVID-19, we resolved to coordinate epidemic prevention and control with economic and social development under the rule of law, maintaining overall social stability and reopening the economy in an orderly manner. This represents a major strategic success in our response to COVID-19. China is expected to be the only major economy with positive growth this year. As we advance our great struggle, great project, great cause, and great dream in a coordinated way, and build our country into a modern socialist country, we should particularly value and promote the rule of law and enable it to play a greater role in consolidating foundations, stabilizing expectations, and bringing long-term benefits. We should also address major challenges, diffuse major risks, overcome major obstacles, and solve major problems in accordance with the law. Sixth, develop a system of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics. This system is the focus of the drive to advance law-based governance. We should expedite the establishment of a complete system of laws, a highly effective enforcement system, a stringent supervision system, an effective supporting system, and a sound system of intra-party regulations. We should also integrate the rule of law with the rule of virtue so that they complement and reinforce each other. As an ancient Chinese scholar observed, a country that is not ruled by law will descend into chaos. A country that sticks to outdated laws will fall into decline. Footnote 2. Shunzi. End of footnote 2. We must improve China's socialist system of laws to make it well-defined, systematic, unified, and authoritative. Since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, the National People's Congress and its Standing Committee have adopted an amendment to the Constitution, enacted 48 laws, made 203 revisions to laws, issued 9 legal interpretations, and passed 79 decisions on legal issues and other matters of great importance. Currently, we have 282 laws in effect, 608 administrative regulations, and more than 12,000 local regulations. The Civil Code sets a good example for codification of laws in other areas. We should draw on our experience in formulating the Civil Code and advance the codification of laws in fields where conditions mature. We should study how to enrich lawmaking forms. We need both substantial legislation and short, quickly formulated, and effective laws and regulations. We should make legislation more targeted, practical, and operational. We need to step up legislation in key areas such as national security, technological innovation, public health, biosafety and biosecurity, eco-civilization, risk management, and law-based governance of foreign-related matters. We need to improve laws that are urgently required by state governance and necessary for meeting the growing expectation of the people for a better life, while filling in gaps and remedying weak points. The rapid development of new technologies and applications such as the digital economy, internet finance, artificial intelligence, big data, and cloud computing has fostered many new business forms and models. However, relevant legislation still lags behind and creates lacuna. Cybercrime has become one of the major threats to China's political, cyber, social, and economic security. 7th, pursue coordinated progress in law-based governance, exercise of state power, and government administration, and integrate the rule of law for the country, the government, and society. Comprehensive law-based governance is a great systematic endeavor. Therefore, we must formulate integrated plans and pursue this goal in a more systematic, holistic, and coordinated way. Law-based governance, exercise of state power, and government administration form an indivisible whole, the key to which is that the party must keep its commitment to law-based governance and that governments at all levels must administer in accordance with the law. A law-based country, government, and society are mutually reinforcing. A law-based country is the goal of developing the rule of law. A law-based governance is the key in building a law-based country. A law-based society is the foundation for building a law-based country. I have emphasized on many occasions that building a law-based government is our principal task, and it is the main force of the drive to advance law-based governance, and plays an exemplary and leading role for building a law-based country and society. We need to first make breakthroughs in this regard. At present, some tough challenges are yet to be overcome in building a law-based government, including the lack of a strong commitment to law-based government, administration, and a tendency to go through the motions in the legal review of administrative decisions. We also need to lay down the rules and define the boundaries for the exercise of administrative power, standardize the procedure for administrative decision-making, and improve the mechanism for building a trustworthy government under the rule of law, so as to increase our ability to administer in accordance with the law, based on the characteristics of the new development stage, focusing on high-quality development and the new development dynamic. We need to expedite the transformation of government functions, move faster to create a market-oriented, law-based, and internationalized business environment, break sectoral monopolies and local protectionism, and remove barriers hindering economic flows, so as to form a unified, orderly, fair, and rule-based national market. Administrative law enforcement involves diverse areas and requires arduous efforts. It connects the government with the people and directly affects the people's trust in the party and the government and their confidence in the rule of law. We need to improve the credibility of the judiciary and promote strict, procedure-based, impartial, and non-abusive law enforcement. In recent years, notable progress has been made in resolving problems such as irregularities and malpractices in law enforcement. Meanwhile, cursory and one-size-fits-all enforcement occurs occasionally in some areas, and neglect of duty is still a vexatious problem. We emphasize strict law enforcement rather than brutal, excessive enforcement of the law, with the goal of forcing violators to treat the law with awe and respect. We would prefer to see that the law is enforced with both rigor and compassion. We need to build a mechanism for coordinated and overseen administrative law enforcement that covers provincial, city, county, and township levels, and strengthen all-around whole process oversight to improve the quality of law enforcement. Ensuring the observance of law by all is a fundamental requirement for building a law-based society. Public legal education needs to keep up with the times and calls for targeted effective measures. We must implement a responsibility system in which law enforcement departments are responsible for providing legal education to the public, and in particular to young people, and constantly increase the public's awareness and understanding of the rule of law, thereby making it a social norm and a basic principle. We need to reinforce law-based governance and foster a sound social environment in which members of society conduct their business in accordance with the law, turn to the law when they need assistance, and rely on the law to solve problems and disputes. As an ancient Chinese physician noted, "Remove health risks before they emerge, and treat ailments before they are serious, thus preventing illnesses before they arise." Footnote 3. Ge Hong, the master who embraces simplicity. Bao Pu Zi. End of footnote 3. To develop the rule of law, we must prioritize prevention and diffuse potential risks while treating symptoms and solving existing problems. Our country's national conditions determine that China should not rely on litigation as the first and last resort. Considering that the country has a population of 1.4 billion, it would create an intolerable burden for the judicial system if every dispute, large or small, were to be brought to court. We need to direct more legal resources to providing public guidance and mediating conflicts, improve preventative legal systems, and maintain and develop the Feng Qiao model in the new era. We also need to integrate mechanisms for preventing, mediating, and settling social disputes, and attach greater importance to work at the grassroots level. We should give full play to the role of community-level governance based on collaboration, participation, and common interests, and modernize municipal social governance with the goal of maintaining social harmony and stability. Eighth, ensure sound lawmaking, strict law enforcement, impartial administration of justice, and the observance of law by all. We must continue to carry forward reform in the domain of rule of law in order to solve prominent conflicts and problems in devising, enforcing, applying, and observing the law. Fairness and justice are the soul and lifeline of the judicature. We should carry out comprehensive and integrated reform of judicial accountability and strengthen regulation and supervision over judicial bodies. We should improve category-based management of judicial personnel and ensure their occupational security. We should regulate the exercise of judicial power and increase the quality and efficiency of case handling. We should improve the law-based system for ensuring social fairness and justice, and to make sure that fairness and justice are served in every judicial case. We should also continue improving the public interest litigation system and effectively safeguard public interests. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, the Central Committee has rolled out major reform measures for improving the institutions and mechanisms by which discipline, inspection, and supervision departments, courts, and public security, prosecuting, and judicial administrative bodies fulfill their respective functions and work closely together while exercising mutual checking in the exercise of investigative, prosecuting, judicial, and enforcement powers. We must work hard to implement these measures to produce concrete results. A raft of judicial corruption cases have emerged in recent years. This reveals that checks and supervision on the exercise of power remain inadequate. Through bribery, some have got away with their crimes, with dozens of judicial, prosecuting, and public security officials speaking on their behalf and greenlighting their conduct, rendering the supervision system toothless. We must accelerate the creation of an effective and procedure-based system to regulate and supervise the exercise of power. We must resolutely break down the support networks, cut the profit chains, and eliminate the underhanded activities, and close the hidden doors, loopholes, through which those who engage in corruption or commit crimes escape punishment. In January 2018, we launched a 3-year nationwide campaign against criminal gangs and organized crime. The campaign cracked down on criminal gangs and their protective umbrellas and support networks, and removed a number of corrupted members within our ranks. The number of gang-related organizations hunted down in these 3 years matched the total number of the previous 10 years, and this had a significant deterrent effect. We must continue to take lawful action against crimes that disrupt the social order. In particular, we must continue the campaign against criminal gangs and organized crime, and continue to fight gangland forces and their protectors on an ongoing basis, so as to ensure peace and stability in both urban and rural areas, and provide the people with a secure and peaceful life. Ninth, take a coordinated approach to the rule of law at home and in matters involving foreign parties. The rule of law is an integral part of a country's core competitiveness. At present, the world is experiencing an accelerating rate of change on a scale unseen in a century. Although peace and development remain the underlying theme of our times, the international landscape is experiencing growing instability and uncertainty. And the COVID-19 pandemic has had a widespread and far-reaching impact. As our country continues to develop, it is moving closer to the center stage of the world. We should accelerate our efforts to create a strategic framework for the rule of law in foreign-related matters, pursue coordinated progress in both domestic and international governance, and better safeguard our country's sovereignty, security, and development interests. We must build a sound system of laws and regulations on foreign-related matters and increase law enforcement and judicial efficiency in this regard. We should encourage Chinese enterprises and citizens who go abroad to abide by local laws, regulations, customs, and practices, and to protect their own legitimate rights and interests with laws and rules. We also need to foster world-class arbitral institutions and law firms, and achieve greater results in serving and supporting the rule of law in matters involving foreign parties. We need to resolutely safeguard the international system with the United Nations at its core, and the international order with international law as its foundation, and uphold the basic principles of international law and the basic norms of international relations based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. We must propose plans to reform international rules and mechanisms that are unjust, unreasonable, and against positive international trends, so as to promote reform in global governance and contribute to building a global community of shared future. 10th, develop a force of high-caliber legal personnel with moral integrity and professional competence. To advance law-based governance, first and foremost, we must build a highly competent team of legal professionals. We must strengthen education in our ideals and convictions, carry out in-depth education on the core socialist values and socialist rule of law, train judicial personnel to be more politically aware, consistent, specialized, and professional in their conduct, and ensure that they are loyal to the party, the country, the people, and the law. We must employ stricter standards and higher requirements in the management of legal professionals. Some judicial personnel and law enforcers fail to maintain integrity in exercising their power. They take bribes, abuse the law for personal gain, and manipulate cases for money, power, and personal favors, severely undermining the authority of the rule of law. We must formulate and improve stringent rules, discipline, and regulations, and use these institutions to regulate key officials, critical areas, and core projects. We must weed out those who take bribes, violate the law, and are disloyal and dishonest to the party. We must combat corruption in law enforcement and the judicature. A recently launched pilot program aiming to strengthen education and regulation of judicial, prosecuting, and public security of officers has identified some rotten apples and held them accountable. The initial results have been acclaimed by the public. We should consolidate and expand the results of the pilot program and show zero tolerance for corruption. We should be strict with ourselves and remove all irregularities, whatever the pain. Legal service providers play an important role in law-based governance. They perform their duties well on the whole, but there are also many problems to be addressed. Some legal professionals are obsessed With money and renown, they engage in misconduct and dishonest activities, damaging the reputation of their profession. A small number are disloyal in their political commitment and even denigrate our country's political and legal systems. Upholding CPC leadership and socialist rule of law must be the fundamental requirement for legal professionals. Through better education, management, and guidance, we should enable them to keep to the right political orientation, perform their duties with moral integrity, and in accordance with laws and regulations, honor their social responsibilities, and contribute to building China into a socialist country under the rule of law. We should advance the reform and development of law schools and improve the quality of legal education. We should also strengthen foreign-related legal education with the focus on training personnel for foreign-related law enforcement, judicature, and legal services, and cultivating and recommending legal professionals for international organizations so as to better serve the overall work in foreign affairs. 11th, make sure that leading officials, though small in number, play a key role in implementing the rule of law. It is leading officials who exercise the governing power of the party and the legislative, administrative, supervisory, and judicial powers of the state. Therefore, they are key to comprehensive law-based governance. Leading officials at all levels must implement the decisions and plans of the CPC Central Committee on law-based governance. They must take the lead in upholding the rule of law and respecting the law, and in understanding and having a good mastery of the law. They must strive to become more adept at applying law-based thinking and approaches to expand reform, promote development, resolve problems, maintain stability, and diffuse risks. They must set a good example in upholding, studying, and observing and applying the law. Understanding the rule of law and being able to fulfill duties in accordance with the law must be important criteria for evaluating the performance of officials. Upholding, studying, observing, and applying the law must be a prerequisite and a conscious action for officials. Comrades, we must uphold the party's centralized, unified leadership over law-based governance. Party committees and governments at all levels should strengthen leadership in promoting the rule of law and exercise leadership over major plans, key tasks, and priority programs to ensure their full implementation. We must implement the decisions of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee and simultaneously plan, arrange, and push forward economic and social development and the rule of law during the 14th five-year plan period, 2021 to 2025. The CPC Central Committee will soon issue outlines for building a law-based country and society, and a new outline for building a law-based governance will be promulgated. Party committees and governments at all levels should take concrete measures to implement these outlines. Departments in all sectors should heighten their awareness of the rule of law, act in strict accordance with the law, and strengthen the role of rule of law on all fronts. Legal and judicial departments must perform their duties in full. The Office of the Commission for Law-Based Governance should fulfill its duties in planning, coordination, supervision, inspection, and implementation, and promote timely identification and resolution of problems in the process. We must do all we can to avoid the practices of favoring form over substance and bureaucratism, and deliver solid results in all tasks related to law-based governance. The drive to comprehensively advance law-based governance marks a profound change in China's state governance. We must guide the drive with sound theories, reinforce theoretical reflection, and find theoretical answers to a critical question of our times. How should we advance law-based governance? With constant progress in combining theory and practice, we should review our party's innovative theories concerning the rule of law in the new era, and apply these theories to better guide law-based governance in all respects. Develop the system of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics. Part of the speech at the 35th Group Study Session of the Political Bureau of the 19th CPC Central Committee, December 6th, 2021. I have emphasized on many occasions that respect for the law contributes to the prosperity of a nation and the rise of a country. As China is now at a crucial stage for national rejuvenation, and the world is experiencing an accelerating rate of change on a scale unseen in a century, we face formidable tasks in advancing reform, promoting development, maintaining stability, and further opening up. It is essential that the rule of law plays its role in consolidating the foundations, stabilizing public expectations, and pursuing long-term interests. Domestically, we are moving towards the second centenary goal of building a modern socialist country. In this new development stage, we are working to implement the new development philosophy, create a new development dynamic, and pursue high-quality development. We will meet the people's growing demands for democracy, the rule of law, equity, justice, security, and a good environment. We will improve people's quality of life and promote common prosperity. All these endeavors raise new and higher requirements for the rule of law. We must improve our capacity and performance in law-based governance across the board and provide firm legal support for realizing the second centenary goal. In a volatile world, international competition is increasingly manifesting the contention between systems, rules, and laws. This requires us to strengthen the laws and regulations concerning foreign-related matters and improve the efficacy of law enforcement and the judicature so as to firmly safeguard our national sovereignty, security, and development interests. In developing a system of Chinese socialist rule of law, we need to plan according to our needs and adopt a holistic approach. At present, and in the near future, we should concentrate on the following tasks. First, follow the right direction. I have emphasized that the key to law-based governance lies in the right direction and effective political guarantees. Specifically, it means we must uphold the party's leadership and the system of Chinese socialism, and put into practice the theory of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics. The system of socialist rule of law with Chinese characteristics is an important component of Chinese socialism. We must always keep this in mind and be fully committed to our path of socialist rule of law. We must properly handle the relationships between political governance and the rule of law, between reform and the rule of law, between the rule of law and the rule of virtue, and between law-based governance of the country and rule-based governance of the party. We must be clear-headed and take a firm stance on upholding overall leadership by the party and the principle of the people as masters of the country. Staying true to our commitment to the people-centered philosophy, we will continue to rely on the people to develop the rule of law in their interests and for their benefit and protection. In the whole process of developing the system of socialist rule of law, we must represent the people's interests, reflect their wishes, protect their rights and interests, and improve their well-being. This system must be based on China's culture and conditions and solve its problems. We must not be misled by erroneous Western ideas. Second, speed up legislation in key areas. As an ancient Chinese thinker said, sound laws for the whole world lead to peace and order under heaven, and sound laws for a country lead to peace and order in this country. Footnote 1. See Note 2, page 250. End of footnote 1. We need to strengthen legislation on national security, scientific and technological innovation, public health, biosafety and biosecurity, the eco-environment, and risk prevention. We should step up legislative efforts to make laws regulating the development of the digital economy, internet finance, artificial intelligence, big data, and cloud computing. And we need to improve laws and regulations that are urgently needed for state governance and are essential for satisfying the people's growing expectation for a better life. Rule-based governance of the party provides a political guarantee for the cause of our party and country, and state laws and party regulations should complement each other. Work will be done to strengthen legislation on social matters of public concern affecting people's well-being. Improvements will be made to laws to close loopholes and strengthen weak areas in supervision. To address problems of strong public concern, such as telecom and online fraud, new types of drug abuse, and those in the entertainment industry, fanatical celebrity cults, unregulated fan misconduct and exploitation, and dual contracts for tax evasion. There will be no tolerance with regard to these issues. In recent years, the disorderly expansion of capital has become a salient problem. Unconstrained growth of the platform economy and the digital economy in the absence of adequate regulation has given rise to many problems in some sectors. Therefore, the anti-monopoly law and the anti-unfair competition law need to be revised quickly, and relevant laws and regulations should be improved at a faster pace. Mao Zedong said, "Constitution making is a matter of science." Footnote 2. Mao Zedong on the Draft Constitution of the People's Republic of China. Collected Works of Mao Zedong, Volume 6, Chinese edition. People's Publishing House, Beijing, 1999, page 330. End of footnote 2. Focusing on the quality of legislation, we will conduct legislative work in a well-conceived manner, through a democratic process, and in accordance with the law. We need to coordinate the promulgation, revision, abolition, interpretation, and compilation of laws to improve the efficiency of legislation and ensure that our legislation is systematic, holistic, and synergetic. Ensuring consistency and coherence in the legal system is a serious political matter. Legislative bodies and relevant departments at all levels should follow legislative procedures, act strictly within the limits of their powers, and refrain from making laws beyond their authority or producing duplicated or ill-conceived legislation. They should do everything possible to effectively prevent departmental interests and local protectionism from interfering with legislative work. The most difficult thing about law is not legislation, but law enforcement. Footnote 3. Zheng Zhusheng, Memorial to the Emperor on the Performance Evaluation of Officials. End of footnote 3. In advancing the rule of law, what is most important and also most difficult is to ensure that laws are enforced strictly, properly, and impartially, and that everybody observes the law. It is imperative that we turn legislation on paper into law enforcement and compliance in action. Efforts will be made to guarantee that everyone is equal before the law, to safeguard the consistency, dignity, and authority of the legal system, and to call to account anyone who violates the Constitution or other laws. Party organizations and leading officials at all levels must unswervingly support judicial bodies in independently exercising judicial power in accordance with the law. They should never abuse their power of office to interfere in the administration of justice or meddle in cases. Third, further reform in the rule of law. Some prominent problems in this domain are attributable to inadequate reform. We will advance comprehensive and integrated reform of the judicial system and develop an impartial, efficient, and authoritative socialist judicial system, so that our people can see equity and justice served in every piece of legislation, in every law enforcement decision, and in each judicial case. We will improve the legal system to ensure social equity and justice, refine the public interest litigation system, the mechanisms for law enforcement, the exercise of supervision power and administration of justice, and strengthen checks and oversight concerning such powers. We will move faster to establish a complete procedure-based and effective system of constraints to strengthen oversight over legislative, judicial, supervisory, and law enforcement powers. We must improve the mechanisms under which discipline, inspection, and supervision, departments, courts, and public security, prosecuting, and judicial administrative bodies perform their respective duties, while investigation, prosecuting, judicial, and enforcement powers are mutual restraints. This will ensure that the entire process of law enforcement and administration of justice is conducted under effective restraint and supervision. We must strengthen overall planning and improve the training system of legal personnel. We should move faster to develop a corps of socialist legal professionals, including lawyers, notaries, judicial authenticators, arbitrators, and mediators who remain loyal to the party, the country, the people, and the law. We will further reform the management system of judicial and law enforcement personnel and strengthen management, education, and training of legal professionals. We will advance education and regulation of judicial, prosecuting, and public security personnel, continue to combat corruption in law enforcement and administration of justice in accordance with the law, and to take resolute action against criminal gangs and organized crime on a regular basis. It should be noted that reform of the system of rule of law, which is of great political significance and bears on the implementation of policies, must follow the correct political direction and uphold fundamental principles. Never should anyone defer to the Western legal system or copy Western practices in the name of reform. Fourth, apply legal means in international matters. Since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, we have coordinated our efforts in the rule of law in both domestic and international matters. Our capacity to defend the interests of the people and the country with legal means has grown remarkably. We must continue to coordinate our efforts in this field at home and abroad. Prioritizing areas with urgent needs, we will strengthen foreign-related legislation, improve laws and regulations against sanctions, interference, and abuse of long-term jurisdiction, and establish a legal system applicable beyond our borders. We should make cooperation in legal enforcement and judicial activities an important topic on the agenda of bilateral and multilateral relations, and extend the security chain for protecting our overseas interests. We should train more professionals in foreign-related legal affairs. Fifth, strengthen theoretical research and public education on the rule of law. We have formed new concepts and measures on law-based governance of the country by summing up China's experience in practicing the socialist rule of law, carrying forward the quintessence of Chinese legal culture, and drawing on international achievements in promoting the rule of law. At the Central Conference on Law-Based Governance held in November 2020, I consolidated these concepts and measures into 11 points that we must continue to implement. Footnote 4. C. Provide sound legal guarantees for socialist modernization. Pages 329 to 346. End of footnote 4. We must strengthen research on the original concepts, principles, domains, and theories of the rule of law in China, and build a Chinese system of academic disciplines, research, and discourse for the science of law. We will introduce the thought on Chinese socialist rule of law for the new era into textbooks and the classroom of all law disciplines, so as to train more competent legal professionals with firm ideals and convictions, love for our country, and solid legal knowledge. It is necessary to strengthen political guidance for lawyers so that they consciously comply with the basic requirements for the profession, including supporting our party's leadership status and socialist rule of law, and they meet the expectations of the party and the people. To ensure observance of the law by all is a fundamental task. We will fully implement a responsibility program in which law enforcement departments are responsible for raising public awareness of the law. Leading officials at all levels should set examples in respecting, studying, observing, and applying the law, while at the same time guiding the people to observe the law and look to the law for solutions to problems whenever they arise. We need to sum up China's experience in developing and practicing the rule of law, elucidate our traditional culture in this area with stories and examples, and increase the international influence of our legal system and theories of the rule of law so that we can have a stronger voice on the global stage. End of Part 11.